Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar on building effective relationships at work. I hope you're comfortably seated and ready to enjoy a moment together where I will be sharing some of my ideas about what is going to help you to build a better relationship at work. In the meantime, let's get to know a bit more our audience. Let's say, who is joining us today, from where you're connecting, and if you have already some expectation about this webinar, maybe something specific that you want to learn. So how about telling us a bit more about yourself, who is with us, where are you connecting, and if you have already some expectation. Okay, greeting from Geneva, Olga. Delighted to see you again. Fantastic. And let's see where else are we getting? Because, by the way, okay, we have Regina that is in Germany but is from Switzerland. We have Olga that is from Geneva but is Ukrainian. So, we have already quite a diversity already in the first two participants. But okay, we have Philippe as well. Hi, Philippe. Thank you for joining. Fresh from your promotion. Great. Let's see who else is with us today and that wants to discover a bit more about effective relationship at work. Oh, fantastic. Daniel from Ghana. Okay, amazing. And then one of our regular follower, Vlad from Mannheim, Germany. Okay, Vlad, good to see you. And Jean-David from Lausanne. Okay, fantastic. Now, glad to see you all, and we will have more opportunity, of course, to interact. Now, since okay, we have also Antoine from Vancouver, right? So we have already three continents. We have already three continents. I mean, we have Americas, we have Africa, and we have Europe. I'm pretty sure that we have someone also from Asia, right? Do we have someone from Asia? Of course, we have Jill from Singapore. Hello, Jill. So, what an amazing international audience for these things. And then, of course, we have lots of people from Zurich, from Rome, from Switzerland, from Ghana, and okay, so from Zug. Fantastic. Okay, that's great. Now, let's get started with the slides of today, because contrary to a LinkedIn Live where I am talking, in the webinar I have also a few slides that I want to share with you. And since not all of you are my connection, then let me start by saying a few words about myself. So I am Giuseppe. I am Italian and Swiss. Those are my three lovely daughters, Emma, Sara, and Luisa. I'm a business person like you. I worked in the corporate environment with leading multinationals in 5 different countries. And I'm teaching in 15 leading business schools in Europe, Asia, and Africa. And this was first a part-time job, and it became a full-time job as of 2018. I became a professor in 2019. And now what I do, well, of course, I run workshop at business schools. I have a number of open enrollment programs. Next one is in Geneva. Then we have also one in Singapore in December. And then what I do the most is really workshop for corporate customers. And sometimes also helping my customer negotiate real life deals. I will tell you a bit more about my influence and persuasion masterclass. I want to tell you also that we have a number of events that are taking place on LinkedIn. So if you are interested to stay updated with the kind of things that we do, I suggest you not only to connect on LinkedIn, but also to follow me actively. There is a new feature on LinkedIn. If you go to my profile, on the top right corner, you will find a bell. If you click on this bell, then you will be updated about my events so that you're not going to miss any. For instance, on the 21st of April at 5 o'clock, I have a negotiation LinkedIn Live. the biggest screw up in negotiation and now not to make them. I am with Mark Raffan. He has one of the best-selling podcasts in the world. So he's the owner of the podcast Negotiation Ninja. So you can expect a nice interaction with him on the 21st of April, but also on the 28th of April, I have another webinar about 28th of April at 12:30 Central European Time, techniques to be more persuasive. So another session with me. On the 3rd of May, how to use your voice to be more persuasive. So again, plenty of opportunities to continue the learning journey and get some new insight for your professional growth. Okay, enough about this. Let's go to the subject of today. Now, when we talked about effective relationship, I wanted to split it into 3 areas. Strong first impression, building rapport, and building trust. So let's look at those 3 components that have, as you can imagine, an increasing level of complexity. First impression, first meeting, building rapport as you connect with people, and building trust, which is more, of course, as a medium to long term kind of activity. Now let's start with the first impression. And first of all, you have only one chance to make a good first impression, right? So you don't want to miss the chance of making a good first impression. And if we start with the topic of physical appearance, and a few people start to say, oh, physical appearance, why, a professor that talks about physical appearance, I mean, that's so degrading. Well, let me share with you a research that was done in the US. They ask people to choose for which of these 2 candidates would you vote. They just showed the photo. They took away, any tie indication that would indicate whether the candidate was a Republican or a Democratic. They just say, okay, look at the photo. Which person will you vote for? Guess what? There was a 75% correlation between the people choose to vote based on the photo compared to the people that was elected in the real election. So, taking care of your appearance, I'm not suggesting that, you have to take some Botox and do whatever, to look extremely sharp, but just taking good care of your physical appearance, have shiny shoes, have dresses that suit you well, are some of the elements that you want to keep in mind to make sure that indeed, you also have the physical appearance that helps. Now, the second component is about the nonverbal messages. And I put a long list of things that you may find useful and relevant for in terms of nonverbal message. Having an open posture, for instance, is something that certainly gives the right first impression, etc. The position of your chin. But the one thing which I prefer is your smile, right? If you convey a smile, then you're likely, to get a smiles back. You may probably heard about the research about mirror neurons. So mirror neurons, they talk about the fact that emotions are contagious, right? That our emotions are reflected into the emotion of the other people. So a warm smile may be a nice way, to get started well in this first meeting. The use of voice. Yes, there would be a lot to say about how to use the voice to make a first impression and to be more persuasive. As I was mentioning before, on the 3rd of May at 1 o'clock, I have a specific LinkedIn Live on this topic. So I'm not going to bother you again on this topic because you can discover everything you want on the 3rd of May at 1 o'clock. I will be interviewing Branka Zai, one of the leading experts on this field. She has also worked with the BBC. She wrote a lot of international papers. So you will enjoy this event to understand more about the use of the voice. Let me move on the next slide. And because, and maybe I'll let you read it for a moment, right? And there are a few other ideas there about that can help you to make a good first impression. Now, you may notice a common theme across a number of those ideas. The focus is on the other party, is not on you. Start with something relevant to them. Let them talk about their interest and priority. Show a sincere interest into the other part. These are some of the things that you want to keep in mind to make sure that you connect and you convey the right image with the other person. If instead, you ended up being, self-centered and only focus about yourself, your ideas, your arguments, your things, that's is not going to help you to make those good first impressions. Let's move to the next step. The next step is about building rapport. But before we go into the building rapport, let me share with you a story. The story of Gladstone and Disraeli. Now, if you are not British, you may not be familiar with those two names. Gladstone and Disraeli were both of them several times prime minister in Great Britain in the 19th century. So they were prominent political figures in Great Britain in the 19th centuries. A journalist decided to interview both of them. And after this interview, he reported back and say, I met Gladstone and I can tell you, I'm convinced he's one of the brightest person in Great Britain. Then he said, I met Disraeli, and as I met him, he made me feel that I was one of the brightest person in Great Britain. What can we take away from the story is that people may forget what you said and did, but will not forget how you made them feel. And it's so important to make people feel good as you interact with other people. Also because, especially, if you're in a sales job, if you're a consultant or other kind of similar roles, then remember that with things being equal, 99% of the times we do business with people that we like. Now, my former boss also said, with things being unequal, still 99% of the times we do business with people that we like. So, getting people to like us is one of the things that you want to keep in mind. But how do we create rapport with the other person? And one of the more classical techniques, you probably already heard it, but I think it's important to start from that one, is nonverbal mirroring, right? Matching the posture, the gesture, the volume and speed of voice of your counterpart. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying that when two people get along, naturally, their body match each other. The people tend to get a similar posture, make similar movements, and have a similar voice and tone. Now, you want to see this example? Just this weekend, if you go to a restaurant, pay attention to a young couple having a meal together. And then you may see that she grabs a glass and he grabs a glass. She bends on the side and he bends on the side. So, when people get along, this matching of the bodies happen naturally. But it doesn't have to be an emotional relationship, a sentimental relationship. I mean, I remember, for instance, in my last corporate job, I had a fantastic person in my team, her name was Karine, and we worked extremely well together. We worked together for 3 years. You know what? When we went to grab a coffee together and discuss, after 30 seconds that we were talking, we both had the same position. As we talk with each other, we discuss, the different matters that we had on the table. So the mirroring technique is just reproducing something that happens naturally, which is, look at the posture of the other party, look at their typical movements, their volume and speed of voice, and try to represent, to reproduce similar kind of things. Now, of course, you reproduce the movements when you're talking, not when you're listening. It would be strange, if you start moving your hands like the Italian do while you're listening to this webinar. Now, there may be other elements, of course, that are important to build the rapport. It may also be at verbal level. We can look for commonalities. That's a typical also element that we take into account. And by the way, a quick trick to identify commonalities of people is make a more extensive personal introduction. You meet people rather than just limiting yourself and say, hello, my name is Abena and I come from Accra. You may say, hello, my name is Abena. I study engineering at the school. I've been working at this people. I have 3 children, whatever. And as you give those kind of detailed introduction, there is more of a likelihood that we will find commonalities and similarities, and this helps to create a better rapport. Active listening, asking question, very powerful element. They deserve, of course, a separate webinar. So we cannot give justice to such large topics in this topic. So I guess that you agree about the importance of those 2 elements to make them work. Okay, let them talk about themselves. Suspend your ego. Ask for advice. That's something that we're gonna dig a bit further on this. Be a storyteller. Again, that's a large topic. I want to go more in details about the last element, use of flattery and compliments. Now, I'm not advocating the use of flattery as something that you should be doing all the time. Now, having said that, you may want to use flattering at a strategic level. Now, let's say, how can you use flattery? I mean, maybe you pretend that you are asking for an advice. And as we have seen, since people like to be asked for advice, then this helps them, feel better about the interaction with you. Now, maybe what you can also do is arguing before agreeing. Says, no, Julia, I have a different point of view versus you. It's oh, well, okay, Julia, you're right. Let's do it this way. Maybe, the technique that you can do is, talk positively about someone else and hoping that as you give some positive information about somebody, then this person, they're going to report to somebody else the positive things that you used. Now, I'm not a big fan of flattery. And what I suggest you instead is to make sincere compliments. To make sincere compliments. What I mean is that even with people that you like less, you can find something positive about them. And then, if you catch a sincere compliment, that is going to be much better. Then, you're going to give some evidence about why you're making this compliment. And what makes the compliment even better is to ask a question. Jack, I'm impressed by your influence skills. I've seen that you were able to turn around the meeting where at the beginning people were opposed to your ideas. What kind of technique do you use to understand, which is the most appropriate technique in the different type of context, right? That will be the 3 steps. But let me give you one additional idea. The compliment will be much more powerful if you are able to spot something that they did not hear all the time. Not something that they get to hear every week, then, it's going to resonate less. But, if you catch something that is more unique, that's great. Or even better, a compliment not that they have naturally, like, I like your eyes, but something maybe where they made an effort for. Well, Paul, I can see that you've been doing a lot of sport recently. Your body looks so tonic, right? Then this shows to Paul that okay, he has been making an effort of going to the gym, of limiting the food intakes, and this shows up in the way it is visible to the other person. So that's something that will make your compliments even better. Fantastic. Now, before we move to the third element, which is about trust and trust building, I just want to make a comment. And actually, we're going to take also one or two questions after that. But just I want to tell you that, managing relationship across function is only a small component on the influencing topic. I think we're getting some short insight into this topic during this webinar, but there are plenty of other things that you may want to learn about influencing. And as I was mentioning at the very beginning, on the 15th and 16th of June, I do have a masterclass on influence and persuasion with Oxford professor Owen Derbyshire. Oxford is the academic director of the Oxford Program on Negotiation, a very bright professor, researcher, and talent, and we work very well together. We also complement each other, Owen being, the more in-depth kind of researcher. I am more, the practitioner, the guy that became a professor at a later stage after over 25 years in corporate world. And you will have the opportunity to spend a couple of days with both of us in Geneva, and then to get access to a 2 years virtual learning program to continue the learning journey, to continue to get new insight, to sharpen your influence and persuasion skills. Note it down in your calendar, but even better, how about signing up quickly? Because the price of the masterclass is 3,000 Swiss francs, but we currently have an early bird rebate. So you can get the masterclass for only 2,400 Swiss francs. So almost the price of a normal workshop with a traditional training company, with two leading professors in Europe, plus a learning journey after those 2 days. And of course, the opportunity to network with a number of senior executives. I mean, we already sold 9 or 10 tickets to the masterclass, so that will be a great opportunity to interact with people from a number of leading multinationals or consulting firms or banking that are joining us to discover some more about influence and persuasion. In the chat, you have the information if you want to discover a bit more. Okay, enough with the information about the masterclass. How about taking some of your questions before we move forward? And here I have a question from Rekina. Effective or agile relationship, how will you describe the difference? And also, how do you rate the importance of a combination of both? Well, I don't want to get into the semantic, Regina, on this topic. I tend to prefer, right, at the end of the day, you will be able to rate whether you have a good relationship or not. And in fact, the next slide will help you understand, how can you rate the quality of the relationship that you have with other people, and how can you be perceived trustworthy in the eyes of other people. And of course, it also depends about, what is your job? I mean, are you just joining this webinar because you want to build a better relationship with your colleagues? Are you a salesperson and you want to build a better relationship with your customer? Are you a consultant? There may also be a difference that may differentiate, what is more or less valuable for the different person. As I was saying, let me maybe share something that may give you some more insight. And this is really about the next level of building relationship. And before we introduce this, let me share with you a story. Gandhi and the young boy. There was a young boy in India and he had diabetes. And as a result, he was not supposed to eat sugar. Unfortunately, he really loved sugar. He loved sugar and he was taking every opportunity to eat more and more sugar. His mother was desperate. He tried incentives, tried penalties, he tried this and that, and nothing worked. This guy was always, the young boy was always finding ways to eat sugar, and that was not good for his health at all. Then his mother had an idea. I know that my boy has a lot of admiration for Gandhi. I'm gonna go to meet Gandhi, and I'm sure that he will find a way to get my child to stop eating sugar. So the mother and the son go to see Gandhi. They walk by foot 2.5 days, and after 2.5 days, they arrive to the place where Gandhi is. Gandhi agrees to meet them, and the mother shares the story. Listen, my boy has diabetes, he should not be eating sugar, and he keeps eating. Please help me out. And Gandhi said, please come back in 3 weeks. Okay. So the mother walks back for 2.5 days. They spend another couple of weeks in their village. Then they walk again to another 2.5 days more, and they come back to see Gandhi. Then the mother says, well, do you remember me? We talked 3 weeks ago. My child eats sugar. Can you please help me? And Gandhi tells to the young boy, you should not be eating sugar. Well, the mother is a bit disappointed, right? She was expecting, something special, something spectacular, something that, she never thought of. So then, she said to Gandhi, well, if that's all you had to say, why you didn't say it 3 weeks ago? And Gandhi replied, because 3 weeks ago, I was also eating sugar. Now, these stories makes us think about the importance of being perceived as trustworthy by other people. So, how do we build the trust? What makes us trustworthy? Now, we all agree that trust is important. My guess, if I ask Mohammed from Sudan, what are the key elements of trust? Then I ask Katia from Switzerland, what are the key elements of trust? And I ask Antoine from Vancouver about what are the key elements of trust. I ended up getting 3 different answers. Now, I want to share with you something which has proven to be effective for over 20 years. So the trust equation was developed in 2001, and after more than 20 years continues to be a reference into the field of trust. Or we should be saying actually trustworthiness equation. Because a person is perceived as trustworthy if he has credibility, plus reliability plus intimacy. And what has a negative impact on trustworthiness is self-orientation. Let's try to understand those 4 components so that we understand what can we do to increase the perception the other people will have about us of being trustworthy, and how can we judge whether the people we are dealing with are trustworthy or not. The first element, credibility. Now, credibility in the business area is about your level of competence. If you're dealing with a salesperson, like, Regina that made the question, she's a sales vice president, then with whom I had the pleasure to interact. By the way, we also signed some global agreements over 20 years ago. Now, what made Regina trustworthy in my eyes is that, she knew the market, she knew the product, she was competent. I knew that I will have a counterpart that was very competent and therefore credible on that side. A second component of the trust equation is about reliability. Reliability is about walking the talk, keeping your promises. So, you're going to trust a salesperson if they tell you, we are going to ship the goods on Friday, and they're really going to ship them on Friday. Your boss is going to trust you if you tell them the presentation will be ready by Wednesday, and the presentation is really ready by Wednesday. The third component in the upper part of the equation, intimacy. That's the emotional side of the relationship, right? While the first two tend to be more, with your behavior, with your competence, with your knowledge, then the intimacy is more about the emotional side. How comfortable do I feel to interact with you? How do I trust, to have even a discussion about difficult topics with you? That's really the intimacy component. Negative impact on trustworthiness, self-orientation. So if you are perceived as someone that only cares about his own goal, his own interests, his own priorities, then you're going to struggle to be perceived as trustworthy. On the other side, if you are the kind of person that consider, their interests and my interests, their priorities and my priorities, then you are on the right path to be perceived as a more trustworthy kind of person. Now, this was really aimed at giving you a quick overview of 3 key components that are going to help you to build a better relationship at work. And by the way, we are open to get any questions that you may have to find out more. But let me summarize the 3 components. It's about, making good first impression, building rapport, and building trust. Those are the 3 elements which we wanted to focus today when talking about effective relationship at work. Now, if you do have some question, then we will be happy to take them. In the meantime, by the way, let me remind you about the masterclass that we have on the 15th and 16th of June. And this is a masterclass about influence and persuasion. So if you want to go much more in depth with lots of role play, exercises, having 2 professors always in the room with you, and network with a number of senior executives. At each masterclass, we get people from 6 or 7 different countries that are joining. So even if the event takes place at Geneva Airport, is really in front of the Geneva Airport, in front of the Geneva train station. So it's very easy to reach, both by plane or by train. So, we do have an international audience, sometimes also from other continents that are joining us for the masterclass. And so that's an opportunity if you're interested to find out more, right? Now, let's see if there is something else that you want to know about the topic of building effective relationship, right? Regina is giving a thought here. Not only ask question, but also ask leading open question, right? And this gives me the opportunity to make a small comment about question, right? In an interaction, in an influencing activity, you're going to have a combination of open question and closed question. Now, you may need to use some closed question, for instance, to summarize a topic, to move from one topic to the other, to close the deal. But most of the time, you're going to use open-ended question. And guess what? The open-ended questions that work best are the ones that start with how and with what. So these are really the questions that encourage a lot of information sharing from the other party and do not make people defensive. Now, the why question is also very powerful, right? The why question helps you to understand the interests and priorities of the other party, but usually makes people defensive. So I suggest you to replace your why question with similar questions that start with how and with what. So let's say that you have a supplier that asks you about a 3 years contract. Then rather than asking why you want the 3 years contract, you may say, well, Margaret, I appreciate your interest in establishing a longer term relationship with us. What is behind your request for a 3 years contract? And that is going to make it much smoother, less aggressive, as opposed to the direct why question. Thank you, Regina, for leading this. Now, let's look at another question. One of the points say be a storyteller. Do you have a few advice to become a good storyteller? Do you teach classes on this topic? Now, the storytelling is one of the topics that we will be covering at the master class. It's also one of the topics that we cover in my last LinkedIn Live, and probably you're going to be able to find it on the web. It was on the 25th of March at 1 o'clock. So we also talk about storytelling. But what I will say is that don't assume that storytelling is about being able to tell a story like a TED speaker. I mean, your effectiveness as an influencer will increase if, in addition to the data, in addition to the facts, in addition to the arguments that you tend to use, you're also going to be able to support them with an illustration, an example, an anecdote, a story. So don't think only storytelling about, okay, I have to invent a complete story that lasts 2 or 3 minutes that is going to keep the people with their mouths open. But think instead about how can you supplement your rational, logical messages with the more emotional side. Here is a question from Philippe. Building effective relationship is one thing. Maintaining them alive is another challenging task, especially with stakeholders that do not work with that frequently. Any tips you have there? Absolutely, Philippe, right? This is really critical for building a relationship. Now, Philippe is in procurement, and we often make this mistake in procurement, that we go to the stakeholder because we have to do a project, then we forget about them for 2 years, then we go back and say, hello, Hannah, how are you? How about doing another project together? But in the meantime, we ignore them for 2 years. So you want to have indeed a keep in touch strategy. This may be as, rather than going for lunch all the time with the same colleague, how about from time to time going for lunch with some of your stakeholders if you're co-located, or have a coffee with them, or organize a drink after work, or maybe invite them to an event that may be appealing to them. It may be as simple as, you see one of my LinkedIn Live events that may be relevant for them, and say, listen, I thought you may be interested about this event about negotiation, since negotiation is a big part of your job. Or I thought this event about be more persuasive or using your voice may be relevant for you. And that's a way to show to this customer that you care. Another way to do it is to give them credit. You just work with an internal stakeholder, they were instrumental to achieve a good success. Don't take all the credit. Recognize the fact that Anna was core to the success of this project, and their expertise and a contribution and the data that she brought into the meeting was core to our success. Maybe you publish a newsletter as a function, and then you give credit to this person in your newsletter, or in a presentation, or any other things that you may do as to communicate. And I think the last advice, Philippe, the most important way to manage the relationship with people is to be there when they need help, right? The moment when people need help is the moment where they're more fragile, and where you have to step up and be available to help them out. And this is going to help you to build the best relationships. I think we went over for about 40 minutes for this LinkedIn Live. It's probably time for you to go back to your work, and for me to go back as well to my teaching and training activity. A quick reminder about our forthcoming events: 21st of April at 5 o'clock, a negotiation event, the biggest screw up in negotiation. On the 28th of April at 12:30, we will be talking about how to be more persuasive. On the 3rd of May at 1 o'clock, how to use your voice to increase your credibility. So let's stay connected. Go to my LinkedIn profile, go to the top right corner, click on the bell, and you will be notified about the future events, so that we can continue the learning journey together. So thank you very much to you all for joining this event, and I look forward to continue the learning journey. And of course, if you want to join us for the master class on the 15 or 16 of June in Geneva, that will be fantastic. Check it out, see the program, and you may be delighted to spend a couple of days with a bright of executives from all over the world, and network with Owe and I and the other participants. So thanks again. Hello, Hanen. Great to see you. Hello, Andrea. Ciao. And thanks again to you all for being with us today.